They know me as the headshot machine. They know me from the highlights they see. They know me from the matches they watch. They talk about my one taps. And I think for me, aiming is so easy. I just go into a match and that's it. But my aim, it comes from more than just the game. For me, aim, it is about precision. This part, people don't see. This part, it does not show up in highlights.
What's up guys, it's Myndrrr, coming to show you my best and most bizarre Armored Core 6 PvP build yet. I call this one Perseverance because I very nearly gave up trying to make a manual aim build work. In the end I found this thing, which is quite possibly the best PvP build in the game currently. It's certainly a contender. I'll briefly begin by telling you that I come from a competitive FPS background. I've been very high rank in many FPS games and even rank 1 in a few. So one of my first thoughts when I watched Armored Core 6 promo footage was, I want to try to make manual aiming work in the PvP. And I'm quite glad I was finally able to find a build where pure manual aim is not only viable, but potentially meta-defining. So let's get into the build. So the heart and soul of this build is this generator, the VE20B. The reason we're using this one is because it has 150 energy firearm specialization. This means that energy weapons will deal 1.5 times damage, and their charge attack will charge 1.5 times as fast. This is very good, because we're using the Nebula plasma rifles. These things have an amazing charge attack that has a huge AoE and deals really sick damage. And impact. They're just great. They're awesome. They also have a really fast charge time even without the VE20B generator. Our shoulder weapons are the Kyoriku jamming bomb launcher. We're going to break the enemy's FCS lock, and we're in manual aim mode, so it's not a problem for us. We just shoot this at our feet and they can't lock onto us anymore unless they get very, very close, which makes them vulnerable. Our second shoulder weapon is the Kyorai napalm bomb launcher. This thing is not essential, you could put different things in this slot. I just like this because when the enemy tries to venture into your jamming cloud, they'll run into napalm on the ground, which hurts them. So it's kind of nice. You don't need it though. We're using the Mine Beta head because it has high stability, Vermisa core because it has high boost efficiency, meaning you can boost a lot. It's lightweight and has pretty good stability. Basho arms because they have very good AP and stability, and we don't care about firearm specialization because this build does not use an FCS. You track with your own arm. And we don't care about recoil because the nebulas are not recoil intensive at all, especially on the charge attack. We're using the Fortaleza wheelchair tank legs. These are very fast. You run at 370, so just incredible. There's really no better legs for this build in my opinion. No booster because we're using tank legs. We're using the cheapest FCS. You can't unequip the FCS completely, so this is the next best thing. If you're making this build and you don't want to manual aim all the time, I would recommend using like Ocellus or, you know, one of the all-rounder FCSs, maybe the mid-range one. Up to you. I'm using this one because I will be manual aiming 100% of the time. The generator we've already talked about, and we're using pulse armor. You could use assault armor. There's an argument for using it on this build because people are going to have to approach you very closely in order to deal damage to you. But I prefer pulse armor personally. It's down to preference. You could pick either. Anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into some PvP, where I will further explain the build, by the way. So first I want to explain why I'm using a different left shoulder weapon in these clips. I'm using the turret launcher things. I learned at the end of this that these things are actually affected by the FCS cloud. As you can see, they're just shooting at nothing when they're in the jammer bomb cloud. So that's why I swapped off of them onto the napalm launcher. But I do have them in the clips. It's not an important part anyway, so not something to worry about. So let me talk for a moment about some of the theory of the build and why it works so well. One reason is because enemies don't get a warning tone when you attack them with a charge attack or a heavy shoulder weapon and it's not locked onto them. They just don't get that blaring alarm that tells them, get out of the way, press your dodge button. People don't know this, but humans actually have better auditory reaction time than visual reaction time. So that warning tone is very important in this game in a subtle way that people don't appreciate until they don't have it. And this build takes it away from them. So that's one reason why these shots hit so often and you see people not dodging them reactively. Obviously we need a tank leg or a quad leg kind of build for this because we want to be able to charge attack without stopping to shoot like you do on a biped. We chose the Fortaleza legs because they're very, very fast, but also because they're small. This is something you don't think about in other builds, but on a manual aim build, you need to have a very good camera. You need to be able to see around your mech to see the enemy you're shooting at. And if you have a big, gigantic tank, you know, a Borne Misa build or one of the hover tanks, you're not going to be able to see the guy you're fighting, and you'll lose just because your mech is too big. It's an actual problem. And one other thing to consider that you don't normally think about in Armored Core 6 is your mouse sensitivity. And I say mouse sensitivity because I wouldn't even want to try to make this work on a controller. I'm not even good with using controllers. Maybe somebody out there could do this, but I highly recommend using mouse and keyboard with this build. And you need a good mouse sensitivity. You need to set your game up like it's an FPS game. Okay, your mouse sensitivity should be no higher than like one mousepad traversal equaling 480 degrees of in-game rotation. That's kind of the upper boundary that you want to be at, and that will set you up to be able to hit a lot of shots, assuming that your aim is good. And I have a lot of experience in FPS games. You're probably not going to hit quite this much if you're kind of new to FPS and new to games in general. I can believe that a newish player could make this work if they had the right setup and, you know, used all of the right settings. So that stuff is very important. So anyway, you can see that this guy, he's not even charging the Carousel anymore because he knows there's no real opportunities to land it. He doesn't have a lock for long enough. He's just going for basic attacks. His whole game is thrown off because he doesn't run into this. Who runs into this? Has anyone ever run into this? I don't think I've ever encountered a manual aim build myself. Maybe people manually aiming grenade launchers in 3v3, but that's about it. So this guy got completely bamboozled, had no idea how to play against the build. There really is no good way to play against it, if I'm honest. You just have to build like a special build to try to counter it. Maybe with like manually aimed ear shots, you could do something against it. That's the only thing I can really think of. It's a very fast build also though, so you don't have to stick to the jammer cloud. If somebody starts like shooting manually aimed grenades down into your jammer cloud, you can just run away at 370 boost speed. You're very fast. You're one of the fastest builds in the game, despite being pretty tanky and having weapons that hit like a truck. So that would work really well against those kind of builds. Anyway, this guy has a sort of mid-range laser rifle build, I think, with Truanos, which are the hot shoulder weapon of the day. Every YouTuber is talking about Truanos as if they're God's gift to the game. And they are pretty good. They're pretty hard to dodge. But they don't beat this level of cheese. Nothing does. This guy's floating around a lot, which does make it hard to hit him with the manual aim attacks. We're going to slowly whittle him down. I'm kind of venturing outside of my jammer cloud launcher clouds. Wow, that was so eloquent the way I said that. But I'm kind of venturing outside of those because I'm a bit impatient. This fight is going to take a long time if I just sit in one spot and try to snipe him across the map. So I'm kind of trying to run him down a bit. Not playing super optimally, just trying to win the fight quickly so I can get my footage and move on. Trying to dodge the Truanos. You know, lateral movement is very important. They are pretty good at tracking. You have to be really early on the dodge with those or they will catch you. And I think a lot of slow builds just can't dodge Truanos altogether. But anyway, we finished this guy off. Good fight. This build, this guy has a Moonlight and an Etsugen, I think. It's one of the SMGs. And missiles. His build is very evasive. It's very sort of flight-based. He's going to be hard to hit with manual aim. But we will manage to chip him down, I'm sure of it. And he doesn't really have anything to threaten us with. He doesn't have any AoE weapons that he can manually aim into our jammer cloud. He just has missiles that are not going to lock onto us. He's not used to this, doesn't know what to do. He's kind of trying to venture close to get a lock now and then, but he can't keep the lock. I just didn't fire my jammer cloud right there. That's why he got a lock on that one. But the health lead is so far that I can afford to make minor mistakes like that, and it's not something I even have to think about. Again, he's trying to get close so he can get a lock, but venturing close makes the nebulas hit him more often. And that's kind of the dilemma of this build. These things hit like trucks. If you try to get close to this build in order to get a super close range lock, you're going to get trucked by the nebulas that deal like 3000 damage per shot and charge really fast. Into the second round, I can only imagine how I would play in his situation. I don't think there's anything I could possibly do. Maybe manually aim the moonlight into the jammer cloud. Probably it. Probably really his only play. That, or just like go blitzkrieg and try to run into the jammer cloud and get a lock and just like burn me with the Etsugen. I don't know. Maybe use assault armor if he has it. He kind of has no options. This build shuts down so many things and so many of the very annoying builds of the game. The missile hell builds. You know, the Zimmerman builds. Everything that people don't like playing against. It shuts down the Bumblebee to a great extent, which I consider to be the best build in the game other than this one. I really can't think of anything that counters this other than those few edge cases that I mentioned with like manually aimed grenades. So into the next fight. Guy has a Myndrrr plasma shotgun or laser shotgun and a moonlight. He's on a wheelchair build. So he's going to be staying ground level, which will make him significantly easier to hit than the last guy. We will hit some nice bank shots on him while he's moving laterally. You really have to tap into the part of your brain that used to play Quake in order to play this build. That's what happens for me anyway. It literally feels like I'm playing Quake again when I shoot people with this build. Or maybe Tribes. If anyone has ever played Tribes Ascend, it's kind of feels like this. You're just predicting people's movement, seeing where their momentum is going, and trying to land a fat nebula on them. It's a very high risk, high reward kind of build. If you miss all your shots, you actually can get timer scummed, or you can just lose, I guess. It hasn't happened to me so far. I haven't lost on the build. But theoretically, if you just miss constantly, I guess you could lose. Luckily, I've been pretty good with my aim so far in these things. I've played a lot of projectile-heavy FPS games. I played a lot of TF2, a lot of Tribes, a lot of Quake. One of the funny things about aiming with projectile weapons is that it's not about aiming the weapon, it's about knowing where a human being is going to try to dodge to. Knowing like where they're going to turn when they see a projectile coming at them. It's almost like psychology. You become a therapist for the other person and you use it to destroy him. So you have to get into their head and kind of know where they're going to go before they know it. That's one of the fun things about playing this build is it feels very different from Armored Core 6. It feels like you're playing a different game entirely. Anyway, GG to that guy. I liked his build. This guy is playing a dual ducats and dual truenos build. It's like the highest impact you can possibly get in the game, basically. He just wants to stun you as much as he can. Unfortunately for him, his build is very dependent on FCS lock. We're not going to let him do that. We don't let the guy lock us. So we sit in our jammer cloud and the guy is just very confused right now. I can guarantee you he doesn't know how to fight this. He's never encountered this. There's really not even a great option for him. I would say probably his best option is to just hug me and go Hail Mary. But yeah, this is the nature of the build. People are not prepared for this. No one knows what it is even. They don't know how you're shooting them when you're in the jammer cloud a lot of the time. So anyway, into the second round. He's starting to try to get more aggressive and more in my face because he knows that's where he's going to have his best odds with the lock. But I'm kind of just not bothering with the jammer bomb launcher because I don't really need it to win the match. I can just kind of face roll and get it over with. You do get a bit complacent on these kind of builds where you just win over and over, and well, this is a tiny bit of complacency at work. Fortunately, it worked out for us in the end. GG. This guy has a very sort of passive rifle-based build with missiles on the shoulders. He's got the big, fat, slow tracking missiles that you don't see very often, and then I think he has Ransetsus in his arms. Basically, he wants to be more patient than me in this match, I think was his strategy. But it doesn't work beautifully. Even if I get impatient and start like fighting him outside of any jammer cloud, I still deal so much more damage than him with these really beefy nebulas that have the 150% damage buff. It's not even winning for him. Even if I, like, you know, forfeit the one big advantage of the build, I can still just kind of win. It's just going to take a while. He has a very floaty build, you know, it's not great to play manual aim against, but we'll manage. We're big boys, we can manage. He starts to kind of run away here. I don't know why he's doing that, because if we just ran away ourselves, we would win on time. We have more health than him. But I do kind of just want to get these matches over with and get my footage, so I get aggressive anyway and try to chase him down. I've got the laser turrets there, kind of shooting him from 500 meters away. They're very optimistic, those things. We stopped using them in the final version of the build. I just have this from the old footage. I really do recommend using the napalm bomb launcher. But GG. Here in the second round, same kind of story. I'm just being very aggressive, venturing on top of the ship to try to vertically chase him down. Start with some altitude, you know. These boosters are not the best at hovering. I could just assault boost up to him, but I'm just kind of lazy. I'm a little bit checked out. I know I'm going to win either way, so I'm not like playing perfectly or, you know, doing anything super incredible here. By the way, you've probably noticed by this point, but the only way to tell their stagger or their health is to look at the right side of the screen. You don't have like an indicator chit from your FCS anymore, so, you know, if you're not looking on the right, you have to just kind of guess what their health is. You do kind of learn how many nebula shots it takes to kill people, so you kind of stop having to look at their health. It's not super important once you know the general health ranges from most builds. But GG, we do finish that guy off. So here's one of my last bits of footage playing the build. We're playing against a guy with the laser drones and some laser weapons. His build totally gets countered by this, I think. He really relies totally on the FCS. In manual aim, maybe he could hit some charge attacks with those guns. That's probably his best bet. I don't think the drones can be manually aimed at all. They're just never going to hit you unless you have a lock, unfortunately. But we're hitting some pretty sick distance shots on him right there. I mean, those have got some serious flight time on them. He's probably sort of working out what's going on. He can't figure out why he's getting shot from inside the jammer cloud. I'm sure it dawns on people in the middle of the match, and like, oh, I forgot you can manually aim. Most people never use the feature, and a lot of people kind of forget that it exists. Second round here, same kind of pattern. There's no real solving this build from one round to the next. You can't just go back into your corner and think about something that will fix this and make you stop losing to this. It's really an assembly screen loss, unfortunately. But he's trying his best. He is starting to play a little bit closer, take like dives into the jammer cloud, which is probably the best thing he can do. Try to get a temporary lock at least. But these weapons just hit like trucks, man. It's so dangerous to get close to it. It's dangerous to be far from it. You'll still get hit a lot of the time because the AoE is absolutely enormous. And there's a certain distance where they will airburst even if you don't shoot anywhere near them, which is pretty incredible. Also, the projectiles themselves are really large and will just detonate on people at a slightly longer range than the visuals indicate. So that's really nice. GG Manicheets. Here is some bonus footage pertaining to one of the earlier versions of this build. This was probably the second most successful version. I had found out that nebulas were the way to go by this time, but I was also trying to make earshots work. I really wanted to like airshot people with the earshots, which just, don't try it. It's not a reliable damage option. You can get so close to people with them and they just won't detonate. But I oddly made it work against a lot of meta builds somehow, just because the nebulas were good. This guy has a ultra meta build. He's got a kicking quad build with Zimmermans, which really should never lose to this in 10,000 years, but somehow, well, just watch. So, if you don't know, quads with hardlock that kick you, you basically can't dodge them. They're just going to hit their kick every time, and it deals a lot of stun, and then the Zimmerman will stun you, and he has a chainsaw on his back to combo with. But somehow we're just able to chunk him down with the nebulas, and maybe he's not super good at playing that build. That's probably the reality of it. A really good player on this build would have beat me here, I'm pretty sure. Same story this round. We're trying to kind of land as much of the nebula damage as we can. It's almost a DPS race because so much of his damage is going to land no matter what, that we have to make sure our damage is also landing no matter what. But that round doesn't work out for us. He does land the chainsaw combo. Here into the third and final round to decide it, we are pretty much employing the same strategy. You want to hit the highest percentage we can of shots. We try to air shot him with the ear shots out of desperation, but that doesn't work. The angle is slightly wrong. I'm trying to stay above him because staying right above people disrupts their FCS. This was one of the theories that I was working with before I started using the jammer bomb launcher, was that there are certain scenarios where an FCS performs worse than manual aim, and that's in vertical situations. If you're right above someone, their FCS totally freaks out and it stops tracking you properly, whereas a human can aim at those angles just fine. That's what we were kind of employing with this build. It is a decent build, like you can win with this, but I named this build Masochism because you really need to enjoy pain and suffering to play this. Somehow we won that match. I'm really not sure how. Okay, into the next match. This sort of old build. We're fighting against a mega missile hell, like runaway type of guy. He's got plasma missiles and regular missiles, and he's chosen the biggest map in the game for a reason. This is his lobby, you know, he's one of those players who just picks the map that allows him to be in the skybox as much as possible. So our only real option is to try to snipe him with the nebulas, occasionally get inside on him and land an earshot. Really our only Hail Mary option. Now we do splash him with one earshot there, and we try to airshot him with the next one, but he goes in a totally different direction. Airshotting with the earshots just doesn't work very well. It's not a very agile weapon. Anyway, he actually kills me at the end here, but my recording software didn't capture it because the match was quite long. I did change the settings after this, so that shouldn't happen again. But here into the next round, we are 0-1 against him, so kind of desperation mode. Got to change up our strategy a little bit. I think get a little bit more aggressive with the earshots, try to catch him when he lands. Landing a stun into a nebula shot or two could change the tide, but we're here at 1/3 of our HP and he is full. Fortunately, we snipe him with the earshots, which does damage him down to half HP. He's kind of squishy. It's one of the natures of playing a very flighty kind of missile hell build, is you can just get nuked if people do catch you. And manually aimed earshots, they're not always great, but when they do work, you feel like a genius. You feel like the greatest player ever. So that's a satisfying moment. Anyway, we're into close range here. We have an opportunity, and if we waste it, we're not going to get another. So I press those earshots, and luckily they land, and they two-tap him basically. 2 earshot cooldowns, and he's dead. Those weapons are really fun to use. You're into the final round. I've been chasing him for a while, so I kind of cut that part out. I've gotten more aggressive in this round, even than the last one. I've been assault boosting at him a lot, so we do actually have him kind of low. But I get stunned, and it's just at the perfect moment for him to totally nuke me. And I'm out of energy, so I think that this is the end. So I go for some Hail Mary long distance nebula shots. He dashes out of the way of that one, otherwise it would have killed him. I'm pretty sure it's over at this point. I'm just going to try to recharge my energy and go for something crazy. For some reason, he positionally outplays here. He tries to go down to the ground at this point to recharge his energy, and he realizes, oh no, I'm in the wrong place. Assault boosts out. For some reason, my earshots didn't hit him, but the nebulas will, with 20 HP left. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. You can follow my YouTube or my Twitch, which will be in the description, if you'd like to see more Armored Core 6 PvP content. I might also play some occasional competitive FPS stuff at some point. You know, I do play upcoming builds from time to time on my Twitch, so you might catch a sneak peek of something meta-breaking if you follow that. But anyway, till next time, bye-bye.